Well, hello, everybody. This is Jim Young, CEO of Realcom. It is so good to have you here today on another episode of Realcom Live. We took last week off for the holidays and we're back at it, and it's exciting to be here again with you. We've got two great companies on today, Boxer Property and Brandywine. And both of these companies, not just big names that people are familiar with, and good brands, but truly innovative companies, not just companies satisfied with the status quo, but companies who have for a long time leaned in and tried to figure out how technology is going to continue to impact buildings and real estate in general. So with that, what I would like to do is bring in our first guest, Justin Segal, who is the president of Boxer Property and the CEO of Stemmen. There's my friend. How are you, sir?
Hey, Jim. How are you?
It is always good. You look like a broadcaster. You got the headset. You got the great set.
It's either that or a pilot, one or the other.
You've missed your calling. So how are you?
Very well, thank you. Very well. Good to see you again, and hello, everybody.
And how are things in Houston?
Houston's going well. This is the time of the year for Houston to shine. Everybody is walking around outside. The weather is beautiful. There's not too much density to cause problems with the current pandemic, and so I think we're in pretty good shape.
So obviously not at business not operating at full capacity, but business is operating.
Yeah, all of our properties in Houston and throughout the country have stayed open through the duration, and we're open for business.
Cool. It's great to hear that people are looking for some positive news and some optimism. So that's very, very encouraging. So, you and I go back a long time, and you have always been, in my mind, one of the most premier innovative people in our industry. And added to that, you're a senior executive. In this case, you're president of Boxer. So it's not like, you have to take orders from somebody or you have to rely on somebody. You have a vision for technology. You understand it, not just tactically, but strategically. And
Jim, I'm blushing now. I'm blushing. Thank you. That's very nice of you to say.
But you're a rare breed for a senior level executive, to literally have his hands on the wheel and to not just have a vision, but know what it takes to deliver. Can you take 30 seconds and just give people your technology background that complements your real estate background?
Sure. I mean, for me, real estate and technology have gone hand in hand since the beginning. We started Boxer in 1992, and then a few years after, I went to law school and did some other things, but wound up starting a software company in 1997. And so from even back then, we were dealing with software on one side and real estate on the other. And we've always kind of been very organized and very process driven, and, understood that the value of data in an organization is critical. And, as the technology infrastructure improved, our ability to use that information effectively for our business improved right along with it. So it's always been a part of our approach and our DNA.
Yeah. The timing is interesting. 97. My first stab at it was 99, where we introduced this thing called a cloud software platform, right? I mean, and you can imagine back in those days, not many people really wanted to talk about clouds other than the ones in the sky.
That's right.
So we could talk for hours, but we're going to try to get this narrowed down to an efficient, very informational conversation. You wanted to bring 3 points to the conversation, right? Being ready for not this disruption, but next, application overload, and innovation requires rigidity. Why don't you take us through those 3 things? And then I've got some questions for you.
Sure. Well, the first thing is, this conversation came from what has become a perpetual conversation about what are we doing in response to the pandemic, and what are we doing today, and how should we respond to this? And I think our approach has been very much to think not about what are we doing, but how are we doing things? Because there's always going to be a disruption. There's always going to be something new that's coming, and we're having to react to. Sometimes it's a massive disruption like we've experienced recently. It may be a disruption for a particular property, or it may even be a slower disruption. But what we think about is, how do we get information to our teams? How do we change people's behavior and processes in a way that can be done quickly and thoroughly? How do we give people the information when and where they need it? and what is our methodology for deploying it. And it's very much like this quote. I have a few quotes for different things. This is one from General Barrow, who is saying, look, really winning a war is not about the tactics. It's about making sure that the supplies are where they need to be. And you can move stuff around, and you have lines of communication open. And that's the same thing in business. And it's really what let us pivot very quickly, not just in the kind of massive disruption of the pandemic, but also over the past years in launching our own collaborative space platform called WorkStyle, and getting into a lot of different markets and asset classes that we had never dealt with before. I'm not sure if I lost Jim, but there we go. I'll just keep rolling. The other thing I would say is that we've seen something happen in the world of technology recently. Not even recently, but we went from a time when we had not enough software. You had an accounting system, maybe a maintenance system or something, to suddenly there were 1 million software products available for everything.
Right.
Like anywhere you look, there's a software product. And as we ran around and started collecting these things, the cure was almost worse than the disease. And I think it's actually the slide before from Star Trek, which was this classic episode about these cute little tribbles. Not that one, but the next one. These cute little things that became just overwhelming. And that's how I feel like we are with our software these days. Like the number of applications that have proliferated into a typical real estate company, each one of them sounds like a great idea. But the real question is, can we find a way to manage all of this stuff? Mm-hmm. And it's no secret that I've focused very heavily on finding universal systems that are applicable across a lot of use cases, rather than going for the too many to manage integrations and the balkanization and silos that come from having an overload of applications. So I think that's been an important thing for us as well.
We did an analysis on the corporate side. What does it take to run a corporate portfolio? And I think we hit over 100 applications, ranging from old DOS applications, Excel spreadsheets, mobile apps, enterprise apps. And when you put that on a diagram and you show somebody the complexity, then you got to talk about integration strategies and single versions of the truth. In some ways, the automation actually becomes counterintuitive or counterproductive, because you've now automated all these little processes, but they're individual islands unto themselves.
That's right.
Yeah,
and very difficult to break that habit too. We wind up kind of getting ourselves down a path where, the way out appears to be, let's get another better application to fit that specific thing.
Right.
But 100 applications is nothing. I mean, there's I don't think we could find an organization maybe other than ours that only uses 100 applications. In fact, for larger organizations, it's in the thousands. Just many of them are happening, under the radar from the IT department.
Exactly. And the bigger the organization, the worse it gets. So let's pivot to that last point, mm-hmm. where, in a big organization, you want to encourage people to come up with creative ideas. However, if you have too much of that, you get to the point where we're talking about, where you've got, 100,000s of islands of information, and where each individual or team can be productive, the organization as a whole suffers. So you have this theory about decentralizing innovation requires rigidity. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little counterintuitive, and I think this would be the third picture that I brought up. It's people think that being creative and being innovative means not having rules or systems or structures. In fact, I would say it's kind of the opposite. And I use the concept of a theater. This is a section of the Sydney Opera House. Like, you can be very creative on the stage, the director, the performers, but you don't want creative construction techniques or creative electricians, and you don't want people, making up random ways to collect the tickets or any of that kind of stuff. Is we need certain things in an organization to be solid and to happen the way that they're supposed to on a regular basis. And really what that does is it frees up cycles for people to focus on innovation and new things and new ideas, and it gives them a stage to work on. But if we don't have those points of rigidity or good process in an organization, then the creativity is just kind of random sometimes, and more often than not, people are spending time chasing around things that should have been done right the first time, and that doesn't really leave them an opportunity to be creative. So finding the right places for rigidity makes a huge difference.
Absolutely. And that comes from strong executive leadership that just doesn't understand real estate, but needs to understand technology at a strategic level. Not just, oh, I read something on a magazine on an airplane, but understanding what does it take to put in an enterprise, put in your governance, understanding how data flows, where it lives. And that's why I said you're in a unique position, because you're a senior level exec in both worlds, both in the real estate and the technology. And that gives you, I think, an advantage.
Well, thank you. I don't think I could be here with you today if we didn't have basic processes running in a regular way in the organization. And that frees up my time to hang out with you guys.
Cool. So we got a couple minutes, about two. What advice, insight do you give to your fellow real estate peers as we go into the first and second quarter of 2021?
I mean, I hate to say it, but I've been saying the same thing for a long time, and I'll say it again now, is it has to do with starting with data, having good data throughout the organization, and then building on that platform some basic, reliable, sustainable processes. And once those things are in place, we can breathe. We've met the basic needs of the organization, and then we can focus on the shiny objects or the fun projects or the innovations. If you skip right to dessert, you might have a little sugar high, but you're not operating in a healthy way.
If I had a nickel every time I saw that over the last 20 plus years, that would amount to a lot of money. And it really requires a CIO to have some fighting skills, to have some business communication skills, and to certainly have some strategic planning skills, so they can present information in a very big, bold way and be prepared to fight. Because I've been in those rooms where they lose because the vision wasn't presented in a way that's stuck for a longer period of time. So
I agree. I've seen it myself.
All right. Well, yeah, always good to see you. Thanks for being part of Realcomm Live and part of the Realcomm community. You were a big part of the conference a few weeks ago, which, by the way, an email should be going out, if not today, Monday, letting people know that they can get in after the fact. All the sessions are up there. All the speakers are up there. The exhibit floor is actually open after the fact. Not exactly the same way, but will allow people. So for those of you watching, Justin's all over that 5-day event, and a 4-day event. I want to thank you for all of your participation, and especially coming to the live portion in Denver. I really appreciate that.
All right. Well, thank you, Jim. And it was great to see you in person and on the screen.
Awesome. You be well, and have a great day.
Thank you.
All right. I always love talking to Justin. He is one smart guy, and somebody that if you ever have a chance to pull him off to the side and have a conversation, you are going to have an incredible opportunity to get some insight. So with that, let's take a brief commercial for our company, Integrated Building Solutions, and then we're going to come back with our next guest. All right, and a big shout out and thank you to our sponsor. So before we bring on our next guest, we're going to run a little video here, but I just want to give a little overview. Brandywine has been a company that Realcomm has been dealing with for over 20 years. They were innovative 20 years ago. They were innovative 15 years ago, and they've had some executive leadership changes over the years, but they've consistently tried to stay the course with innovation. And our next guest, Jim Kurek, who's the Chief Technology Innovation Officer, is going to explain it to you. But before we bring Jim on, let's run a quick video on Brandywine to give you a little bit of an idea of what they're all about. All right, with that, let's bring on Jim. Jim, how are you?
Good, Jim. How are you?
Good. Always great to see you.
It's great to be here. Hi to everybody else out there.
And I want to say, great job on that video. It really, in a short amount of time, communicates a culture and what your company is all about. So good job.
Our team is fantastic, and they love what they do.
Yeah, and that's important. Before we get started, I do also want to do a shout out to you and a thank you for being a participant, an on-site live participate in our event a few weeks back. Obviously, we didn't have the 2,500 people that we had in Nashville the year before, but we put our stake in the sand to do a hybrid event, whatever that meant. It changed, morphed daily, but in the end, we got 60 plus people in a room safely. Went through extraordinary measures, COVID procedures that turned out to be very effective with the technologies we had in place. But it meant a lot for those of you who came and supported the event physically, spoke, and participated in the on-site part. So thank you for that.
Yeah, it was a great event, and it was nice to hear some questions and applause in person.
Wasn't it? Yeah. Oh, the applause weren't quite like our general session, but regardless, when those people, it was like they had to release this energy, and those few people made a lot of noise, which was kind of fun. So where we're at now is everybody is obviously COVID out. We've got COVID fatigue, pandemic fatigue. Different states around the country are taking different approaches. Businesses open, close. I mean, it's wearing people out. But there's some hope that with a vaccine, in the coming few months, coming few weeks, maybe, that we'll start to possibly see some normalcy. So I want to focus not on where we are right now. I want to focus on where we're going. But why don't you take a minute or two, just say where you are right now, and then I want to spend the bulk of the conversation on what you see for first and second quarter at Brandywine.
Sure. So I would agree. There's a lot of COVID fatigue out there. I started at Brandywine the first week of March, so I was in the office for about 4 days before we got the nod to start working remote, and we were kind of right in the middle of it at that point. So Brandywine has remained open as far as all of their assets and their corporate locations. Brandywine has fantastic relationships directly with their tenants. So partnering with the tenants to bring in technologies, procedures, cleaning staff, whatever it might be, to enable them to continue to operate was important from day one. Today, I've been back in
Regular, 3 days a week, 4 days a week.
5 days a week. I'm in the office. It's been great. So the ride in has been a little bit more traffic every day. The Schuylkill Expressway through Philly is kind of one of the main arteries, and as that gets backed up, nobody likes the Schuylkill when it's backed up, but it's a sign that things are coming back slowly but surely.
Cool. Now, anticipating the day when we're back to some kind of normal, let's slide into the first and the second quarter. Are you making changes to the building? Are you trying to anticipate how many people are coming back? Will they ever come back? When you're sitting in your strategy meetings, especially as it relates to the technology required in a home office environment, and then the health technologies and the experiential technologies that tenants are going to expect when they get back in the office, what are you guys talking about, as far as getting people back into the buildings next year?
Yeah, so our Brandywine considered their property management folks and their building engineers and all as essential employees from day one. So we've had dedicated employees working in our buildings, changing HVACs, putting new technology in, plexiglass from March. So if you go into any one of our buildings now, you see all of these things that a lot of folks are talking about. What do we do? What will we do when tenants are ready to come back? We've already got it in place.
Wow.
The other piece of this is from an employee perspective, right? COVID showed that we had to react. We had to become a remote workforce. So the capability technically for people to work remote was always there, right? Everybody kind of had a VPN or whatever it might be. But to have an entire company work remote was different because now you had department to department level communications and processes disrupted. It wasn't just one person that was not there anymore. So I think we had to adapt on that front, and we did so very, very early in the process. So from a tenant perspective, the conversations, there was kind of an ebb and a flow to the conversations, right? So there was, I think, a fear that you'd have tenants, and this is probably all verticals of commercial real estate. You'd probably have tenants handing over the keys, right? We don't need an office. We can't pay the rent, whatever it might be. And we haven't seen that. There was a little bit of that fear and concern, but the conversations now have shifted. Folks realize that working from home is nice, but it's very difficult to do that when you have life surrounding you. Right. So that office may not be where you're going to be every day, 9 to 5, punching that clock, but you need that center of culture for your organization, right? So the office is still going to be there. It's still going to be imperative. It's going to have a little bit different face to it these days.
So there's been, on the tech side, there's two conversations. Well, there's three. There's the traditional real estate tech enterprise conversation. There's the COVID tech health and wellness conversation. And then there's this new one popping up. It actually isn't new. It's been around for a while, is the experiential, meaning if I'm going to come into that office, maybe it's not 5 days a week, but 3 days a week, I'm going to expect something better than I can get at home, whether it's faster broadband or full screen walls for engaging teleconferencing, telepresence. Are you starting to peek into any of those technologies yet?
We are. So from a traditional office portfolio, right, we're starting to branch out into kind of these on-demand spaces. So if you think about in Philadelphia and in Austin, where we have kind of these traditional city assets, we've now are thinking about, well, where can we stand up very quickly, almost these turnkey solutions, these 1,000, 2,000 square foot on-demand spaces for folks. They'll be wired with internet. They're going to have furniture. They'll have Wi-Fi or wired, some phones, artwork. Everything will be there. The amenities for coffee and refrigerator, all that stuff will be there, kind of ready to go. So instead of having 50,000 square feet downtown packed with people, now you can kind of spread out a little bit and augment and be somewhere else. Right.
So unfortunately, God, these segments go way too quick. We only got about a minute. What's your parting thoughts going into first quarter to your peers?
So I was listening to Justin, and the data is absolutely becoming more and more important. As organizations, we have a lot of data. What we need to do is start using the data, right? Collecting it, putting it in kind of common frameworks, and using that data to make better business decisions. COVID has shown us that the ifs are really whens. Not if something will happen, when will it happen, and how do we react? I think that's the moving forward.
And as we've discussed before, the integration with those traditional enterprises, the property management, the tenant management, lease administration with the smart building technologies, the conversation gets even more complicated, more comprehensive, and really requires CIOs like you to really, not just understand the back of the house, but also the front.
Right.
So that's right. All right. Well, thank you. Always a pleasure. Really enjoy seeing you, spending some time with you, and I am sure we're going to be in touch.
Absolutely. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
Be well. Great. All right. Jim is just one of those guys who gets up in the morning determined to make the real estate world better, and it's always a joy chatting with him. So now we're going to move on to one of my favorite segments of Realcomm Live, which is our weekly news update. And as you know, we send out a weekly newsletter with 10 articles. And as I've explained every week, it's a little bit of technology, a little bit of human. This guy, Mr. Howard Berger, nobody better to do that. And Howard, why don't you give us a little update on what's going on in prop tech, real estate tech innovation, whatever we call it, for this week.
I will. Thank you, Jim. So here's a sampling of our featured stories from our weekly news briefing. This is released every Thursday, 11 a.m. Pacific. Subscription's free. You can subscribe by going to our website, realcomm2ms.com, and just click on news. So this week's lead article comes from Google's smart building team. Now, this is a group of very smart folks dedicated to digitizing Google's massive portfolio, including prodigious application of IoT, data, as well as a resilient, sustainable architecture to support all this new technology at scale, both now and for the future. And in this article, they cover some foundational changes to how buildings are designed and constructed. Also creating a next generation technology architecture for smart buildings, and then also new industry standards and certifications for smart building technology environments. Now, smart building insights coming out of Google are nothing short of industries changing, so don't miss this article. And also on the sports and entertainment front, so costing more than $5 billion. The SoFi Stadium complex in LA is probably the most technologically advanced sports and entertainment venue in the world. Their converged network alone is massive and incredibly complex. It brings together all kinds of things: the wireless networks, the DAS, over 2,400 antenna, the server compute platforms, the telecom, the IPTV network, over 2,600 indoor and outdoor digital signs, including this ginormous 120-foot long 4K dual-sided oval main video board. They've got television broadcast systems, and plus the building management systems, of course. And they converge this all into a unified network platform, seamlessly integrated into Google Cloud. I would encourage you to read about this amazing feat of technology innovation, better understand the art of what's possible, not only in sports and entertainment venues, but also could be applied to our commercial buildings as well. And last, I'll mention one more. So Amazon has been radically transforming both logistics and the customer point of sale experience in retail grocery shopping. First, they came out with their Amazon Go stores, you know those. And then with their cashierless just walk out technology, where shoppers enter the store using a credit card, no app required. Then cameras and sensors detect what products shoppers are taking off the shelves, keep track of them, and when they're done, the customers just walk out of the store and their credit cards are charged. In its most recent move, Amazon announced something called Dash Cart, and they've eliminated the need for all the external cameras and sensors to detect the items coming off the shelves. And now the shopping carts are embedded with something called computer vision and sensor fusion to identify and log the items. So continue to look to Amazon to continue to push the envelope in terms of retail shopping technology and logistics. So I am out of time, and that's it for me today. There's much more in the weekly briefing. Check it out, and I'll see you all next week.
As always, my friend, you do a great job. A lot of news in 3 minutes, so thank you.
Thanks, Jim. And bye, everyone.
All right, so before I wrap it up for today, let's hear a word from one of our new sponsors, Invicara, and then I'm going to close up this week's episode. All right, so what did we get out of this week's episode? I heard a lot of data. We've been talking data for a long time, but that conversation's not going away. Needing to know, insights into your business, needing to communicate to every aspect of your organization. It's been a long journey. We've been on this data conversation for at least 15, some people would argue 20 years, but it's not going away. And both Justin and Jim reiterated that. I also heard about, real estate did not close down during the pandemic. People chose not to go to it, but these buildings stayed open, and the innovative companies kept making changes even while nobody was there. And they're certainly getting ready for return. So with that, I would like to let you know next week we got two great speakers again, two guests, Corey Clark from RXR Realty in New York and Cecilia Lee from Urban Edge. You talk about two innovative people. You're not going to want to miss that episode. You're going to hear some things that you may have not heard, especially RXR, what they're doing with the COVID technologies that they placed into their buildings in the city. So with that, I would like to say thank you to all, and you have a great weekend, and we will see you next week on Realcomm Live.